dead crane groaned above a drowning Marseille dock, while 5 strangers realized the storm drill had become the real emergency. The tide climbed the broken quay, swallowing crates, oil rainbows, and every comfortable assumption they carried. A Bangladeshi hydrologist clutched soaked tide charts, seeing patterns in the water that everyone else mistook for panic. Beside him, a Tunisian cook who spoke with her hands scanned the chaos, reading fear in shoulders, wrists, and tightening jaws. A displaced Korean street artist pressed wet paint-stained palms against the crane housing, noticing shapes and symbols hidden inside rust. A Navajo battery mechanic opened a dented tool case and judged the dying control box the way ranchers study clouds before lightning. Near the wheel assembly, an elderly Serbian violin repairer touched the shuddering gears with surgeon patience, listening for damage through his fingertips. They had been assembled for the world's first all-language storm drill, designed to test rescue across accents, silence, and mistrust. Now the radios coughed static, the dock siren was drowned, and the nearest rescue boats drifted blind beyond walls of rain. The crane had stalled halfway over black water, locking emergency lights above the flood and turning the quay into a trap. Then the hydrologist noticed the largest exposed gear still caught wind and current, whining loud enough to cut through the storm. The mechanic pried off a panel and found one surviving circuit, enough to drive that gear if someone could coax motion from dead metal. The artist studied nearby boats vanishing behind rain curtains and realized repetition, not language, would have to become their beacon. The cook signed sharp, economical motions into the air, urging them to teach before time erased any chance of coordination. The violin repairer checked his watch, then the waterline, and measured 14 minutes before the tide undercut the last dry footing. Their task became brutally simple: one word, one motion, and one trade from each person. Fast enough to build trust before the dock disappeared. The first obstacle was speed, because every attempt to explain too much made eyes glaze while the water rose higher. The second obstacle was pride, the inward flinch each person felt when expertise seemed useless beside someone else's emergency. The third obstacle was noise, with metal shrieking, waves slamming concrete, and rain drumming so hard even clear speech broke apart midair. So they switched from full explanations to essentials, choosing a single word each that could survive storm, fear, and foreign mouths. The hydrologist drew a spiral in oily rainwater and taught flow, showing how currents curl before they strike from a new angle. The cook tapped her chest, then opened both hands outward, teaching trust with a gesture visible through rain and distance. The street artist dragged white chalk across rusted steel and taught Mark, the power of a sign repeated until strangers moved together. The battery mechanic held up a copper lead and taught charge, a small word carrying the truth that dead systems can borrow life. The violin repairer tightened a tiny peg from his satchel and taught tune, proving that alignment matters more than force when damaged things must work. Next came one motion each, because storms erase vocabulary long before they erase the need to act. The hydrologist cupped one hand and sliced it sideways, indicating a cross-current that warned where rescue boats could safely approach. The cook created a fierce two-step signal, palms up then down, translating calm first, move second, so panic would not scramble timing. The artist lifted one arm high and stamped twice, designing a silhouette visible even in blurred rain. The mechanic rotated an invisible crank, then jabbed downward, showing exactly when power should be pushed and when brakes should hold. The violin repairer pinched thumb and forefinger, then slowly widened them, teaching the motion of careful adjustment instead of reckless yanking. Their final exchange was trade, because respect grows fastest when people witness what another pair of hands can do. The hydrologist climbed onto a tilted crate and read flood ripples against the dock pilings, predicting a 6-second lull between wave strikes. The cook ripped strips from flour sacks, wrapping slick handles and wrists so tired hands would keep gripping metal when fear made palms sweat. The artist mapped broad reflective symbols on the crane boom with salvage paint, turning rusty steel into a readable message above the storm. The mechanic harvested charge from emergency batteries in a floating forklift, wiring a pulse into the crane's stubborn motor with improvised clamps. The repairer used resin, wire, and impossible delicacy to shim a chattering gear, so vibration became controlled resonance instead of ruin. In less than 10 minutes, strangers who could barely introduce themselves had built a shared operating system from gestures, labor, and borrowed words. Then the true test arrived, when a surge slammed the quay, split a pallet against the crane base, and knocked the hydrologist to one knee. No one froze, because the cook flashed trust with both hands, and every body on that platform answered with trained motion. The mechanic fed the stolen charge into the control line exactly during the lull. The hydrologist counted through clenched teeth. The repairer widened the gear tolerance a hair at a time, tuning metal like a wounded instrument begging not to snap. The artist climbed the service ladder and painted 3 giant repeating bars across the boom, a storm-proof sign simple enough for desperate eyes. When the current caught the restored gear, the crane released a long mechanical howl that rolled over the flood like an iron beacon. The artist's painted bars flashed with each rotation, and the sound-matched rhythm turned random noise into a deliberate rescue code. Out beyond the rain wall, a rescue boat changed direction, then another, steering toward the only signal bold enough to survive confusion. The tide kept chewing the dock, but now the team moved with economy, each person trusting information they could not independently verify. The hydrologist adjusted timing as cross-currents shifted, proving that data matters most when it updates under pressure instead of decorating a clipboard. The cook coordinated breathing and grip through visible cues, showing that leadership is often the art of making calm contagious. The mechanic redistributed power in short bursts, teaching that scarce resources last longer when pulsed with purpose instead of burned in panic. The artist refreshed fading markings between wave hits, reminding everyone that communication must be maintained, not merely invented once. The repairer kept listening through metal tremors, demonstrating that precision under stress can save more than speed without attention ever could. Rescue ropes finally arced through the rain, and deck lights washed the quay in gold just as the last edge of concrete began collapsing. Boat crews later said they had not followed a language they recognized, but a pattern they could trust with their lives. On the soaked deck, the 5 strangers looked less like survivors of chaos and more like proof that cooperation can be engineered in minutes. Their victory was not magical harmony. They still mispronounced one another's words and misunderstood half the gestures after the danger passed. The transformation was subtler and more useful. They had learned how to make difference operational before making it comfortable. Start smaller than pride wants, because one clear word beats a perfect speech when time, stress, or emotion are flooding the room. Add one visible motion everyone can repeat, because bodies often understand safety and intention before minds settle their arguments. Trade one practical skill instead of one opinion, because shared work builds credibility faster than explanation ever will. Update the plan as reality changes, because loyalty to old assumptions sinks teams quicker than rising water. Treat precision like kindness, since careful adjustments in tone, timing, and attention can keep damaged systems from tearing apart. On that broken Marseille quay, they did not erase their cultures to save one another. They turned them into tools. The crane kept screaming over the flood until every nearby boat found the signal, and 5 separate lives briefly became one reliable map out of danger.